She was a single mother who was climbing towards a bright future.
You couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
She never expected to find love in her own neighborhood.
Hey, you need some help?
But when it showed up on her doorstep, she was like a moth to the flame.
They immediately hit it off.
She loved that he was the strong, silent type.
However, the whirlwind romance would be cut short by an unthinkable tragedy.
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start.
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs.
As investigators pore over the case, the mystery only deepens.
Someone has carved an obscenity in the side of her car.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble.
He was not all the way right in the mind. His mind is gone.
Detectives would soon learn that a twisted mind can be just as dangerous as a lethal weapon.
He's not telling the whole story. He has a psychotic disorder. His anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
Thursday, February 4th, 2016. It's lunchtime in Waco, Texas, a quiet community located halfway between Dallas and Austin.
It's a city dubbed the heart of Texas.
It's been a community experiencing quite a bit of growth in the last 10 or 15 years. It's a community on the rise, but very close-knit one.
However, one close-knit Waco family has spent their day in a panic. At 12:30 p.m., Latasha Kenton arrives at the home of her 29-year-old niece, Nikki Walker.
Well, I just got here.
No one has seen or heard from Nikki in the last few days.
Nikki hadn't called to check on her two kids, who were staying at her grandmother's for the week, while Nikki worked late shifts at her new job.
She was really a devoted mother, close to her children, and she would make phone calls to them when she was on break from work. She didn't make her typical routine phone calls, which raised red flags to the family.
Her family was growing increasingly concerned, so her aunt decided to check the home.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to get inside. Well, her car is here, so that's a good sign.
She saw Nikki's car parked in the front yard.
I'll keep you posted. All right.
And when Latasha approaches the vehicle, she notices her niece inside.
Nikki!
Inside the car, Nikki is in the front seat, but she is unconscious and unresponsive.
Latasha makes a desperate call to 911. But when police arrive, it's clear there's no saving Latasha's niece.
As soon as they touch her body, they realize, unfortunately, they're too late.
No pulse.
Oh, Nikki!
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
Nikki Walker is dead.
Unikia Walker, also known as Nikki, carried a radiant energy with her wherever she went.
Nikki had a very infectious personality where you couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She was bubbly and fun-loving and eager to enjoy new experiences. Nikki had 2 children that she adored.
As a single mom with 2 little mouths to feed, Nikki was no stranger to hard work.
Hey, girl. Yeah, I can cover for you. Let me just make sure my grandma can watch the kids, okay?
For a while, she worked as a customer service representative for a Texas utility company.
But she wasn't satisfied with where she was in life, so she wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
And that's what led her to decide to go back to school and further her career.
She enrolled in Texas State Technical College.
Nikki's goal was to get a job in security technologies, and before long, she'd do just that.
She started a position at a well-known aerospace and defense company.
She had built a really good life for herself.
And in the spring of 2015, she'd find a partner to share it with.
Hey, you need some help?
That's okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me help you out here.
36-year-old Marcus Scott lived in Nikki's neighborhood, just a couple streets away.
Marcus was the strong, silent type.
Nikki was drawn in by his sweet and gentle demeanor.
Thank you. It's been a long day.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I live right down the street if you ever need anything.
Good to know.
Between work, school, and being a single mom, Nikki didn't get out very much. So dating someone who lived in her neighborhood seemed like a perfect scenario.
It seemed like a match made in heaven.
But for long, they were inseparable, hanging out all the time.
The kids liked spending time with him as much as she did.
Nikki wanted a man who would stay by her side and help her raise her children.
Nikki really saw a future with this individual and thought they could be together.
So how did she end up dead in the driveway of her own home?
Judging by the fact that her body was cold to the touch and rigor mortis had already set in, police can tell Nikki has already been dead as long as 48 hours.
But what happened to her?
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs, no abrasions. None of those things were seen.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start. So from Jump Street, we're talking about a bit of a mystery as to how she got to where she got and what had happened to her leading to her death.
Police began to speculate that maybe Nikki passed away from some type of medical issue or possibly even a drug overdose.
However, on the exterior of Nikki's vehicle, investigators locate a telling clue that suggests otherwise.
Detectives, come take a look at this.
Someone has carved the word in the paint.
That is someone who has thought about this. They know what they're going to do.
At 29 years old, Nikki Walker had already built a great life for herself in Waco, Texas.
With 2 healthy children, a good job, and a good man by her side, she had everything that she ever wanted.
But now Nikki has been found dead inside her car. And based on the initial evidence, it looks like she was murdered.
Detectives, come check this out.
On the exterior of the vehicle, someone has carved the word in the paint.
Clearly, someone with a motivation or animosity toward Nikki had damaged her car.
And a closer look at Nikki's body reveals additional signs of foul play.
Once detectives check her eyes, they see burst blood vessels, telltale signs of strangulation.
Strangulation is an incredibly intimate act.
It requires a killer to stare into their victim's eyes for several minutes while they choke them.
Someone has to be extremely motivated to actually strangle a person to death. Whoever committed this crime had personal reasons to do so.
Inside the vehicle, investigators notice another clue.
And that's the blood stain on the passenger seat of the vehicle.
There aren't any injuries on Nikki that would produce a blood stain, so investigators believed that the blood that they found belonged to Nikki's killer.
Crime scene technicians take photographs. They swab the vehicle inside and out, and specifically the blood stain was swabbed.
They don't locate any other blood evidence inside the home.
Meanwhile, Nikki's family is becoming more and more desperate for answers.
Many of the victims' loved ones have already received the news and are showing up at the scene.
Her family was actually in the process of filing a missing persons report right before her aunt discovered the body.
So sorry for your loss, but please know we're going to do everything we can to bring Nikki's killer to justice.
Thank you.
Nikki's relatives are just devastated from the news that Nikki has been murdered.
None of her family could believe that someone as kind and caring as Nikki could have been harmed in such a way.
You know, she didn't deserve this.
Because the way the murder was committed was so personal, the police asked Nikki's family if she had been involved in any type of dating relationships.
Romantic partners are almost always the place to start in any type of homicide investigation.
She was seeing a guy from the neighborhood named Marcus.
According to Nikki's family, they had only been together for about 6 weeks.
However, detectives still know that Marcus is someone they need to talk to right away.
We'll be sure to keep you updated.
So after leaving the crime scene, detectives head straight to Marcus's house.
When detectives approach the front door, they can smell food cooking and hear a TV playing inside the home.
Marcus Scott?
It's obvious someone is inside the house, but when they knock on the door, no one answers.
Marcus, it's the police. We need to talk to you.
They make several attempts to get Marcus's attention, but he never comes to the door.
To the investigators, this is a huge red flag that Marcus may be hiding something. Why would an innocent person refuse to answer the door?
Waco homicide detectives investigating the murder of Nikki Walker are attempting to speak with her boyfriend, Marcus Scott.
Hello, anybody home?
They can hear the TV playing, but he refuses to answer the door.
They can't help but wonder if he is avoiding them because he has some type of involvement in this crime.
Without a warrant, the only thing detectives can do is instruct officers to continue patrolling the area and wait for Marcus to emerge.
We're headed back to headquarters. Let us know if you make any contact.
And later that evening, investigators are in luck.
At about 9:30 p.m., the patrol officer notices Marcus standing outside with another man.
Marcus Scott? Yes, officer.
The officer approaches Marcus and informs him that detectives are looking to speak with him about Nikki's death.
Detectives came by to talk to you earlier this morning. You didn't answer the door. Why not?
Oh, that was you guys? My bad. I was a little preoccupied.
Marcus told them that he heard knocks earlier that day, but he was in the bathroom and he couldn't answer the door. By the time he came out, he said they were gone.
Marcus says he was devastated to learn about Nikki's untimely death.
We weren't together for long, but man, I really cared about her.
Marcus appears to be cooperative.
He said he wants to speak to the detectives to clear his name.
Okay, well, you can come back with me to the station. Who's your friend here?
That's just my boy, Leland.
Leland?
Yeah.
Leland Marsh?
The officer recognized the name Leland Marsh.
ID.
Leland has a warrant out for his arrest for a burglary charge.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble with the law.
Guess what, Leland? You get to ride with me, too. Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
What? Man.
Back at police headquarters, the detectives investigating Nikki's murder sit down with Marcus Scott.
Tell us about your relationship with Nikki Walker.
Well, I met her about a month ago.
He proceeds to tell detectives that they had an on-again, off-again relationship, but they maintained a friends with benefit type relationship.
Did you kill Nikki Walker?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know who did?
No, I wish I did, but no.
He wasn't able to provide any other leads.
Detectives are still suspicious of Marcus, but they'll need more than just a hunch to solve this case.
Not only was Marcus Nikki's last romantic partner, but it also appears that Marcus was avoiding the detectives.
There was some investigating to be done, but they were believing that Marcus had something to do with it.
All right. Thank you for your time, Marcus.
No problem.
And the next morning, detectives learn there's an inmate at the county jail with some promising information for them.
Homicide. Oh, he does. Interesting. Yeah, we'll be right down. Gotta go.
The informant is none other than Marcus's friend, Leland Marsh. Leland admits it's been difficult for him to come forward.
This is one of my childhood friends. When I was homeless, his mother took me in. You know what I'm saying?
You really were close.
But when Leland heard about what happened to Nikki, he started to get an uneasy feeling.
There were some things that were not adding up about Marcus's actions in the hours before Nikki was killed.
Investigators believe that Nikki was killed sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning.
I had to be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at a half, like maybe 1 in the morning.
But Leland tells police that when he dropped Marcus off, Nikki was not at her home.
Don't let anybody hear, man.
It's okay. I'll wait.
She used to get off work at, I think, 12:45. And Marcus would be like, well, drop me off over here. And I'm like, Marcus, bro, what, you just gonna be sitting outside till she come?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, she'll be in here in a minute.
Leland says that he offered to drop Marcus off at a later time when Nikki was home, but Marcus refused.
Hey, you sure?
Yeah, man. I'm good. I'll see you later.
All right, peace.
Now, remember, I talked to him the next day, which was Wednesday. I talked to him. I'm like, bro, what happened with Lil Mom? You stayed over there last night? He's like, nah, she never came home, so I walked to the house.
So she never came home?
Yeah, he's like, she never came home.
And on Thursday, Leland says he found out the terrible news.
When I passed by the house, I'm like, damn, they had yellow tape off, and I'm like, man, I hope nothing happened. So I got out and I talked to this old lady, and I'm like, man, what happened?
Is Nikki okay?
She's like, my niece is dead.
While he was still at the scene, Leland immediately called Marcus.
I called Marcus, and he answered the phone. I'm like, bro, the girl dead, bro. Nikki dead, bro. You know, so somebody killed her, bro.
But to Leland's surprise, Marcus didn't react the way he thought he would.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Mark was like, we just broke up. That's
I
what he
understand
said.
that you
So,
just
but
broke
one-
up, but this is someone you've
every
been in a
day.
relationship with.
Every day.
You're going to have some kind of reaction.
Something about that didn't sit right. Even though they were no longer a couple, something as horrific as a homicide should at least warrant some type of reaction.
Leland admits that even when Marcus and Nikki were together, their relationship was rocky.
Based on the arguments that he heard when they were together, Nikki felt like Marcus was smothering her.
Marcus, this is just becoming too much. I need space.
And she had started meeting new people, going out to clubs. She was like, Marcus, you know, you want me to be around you 24/7. I got my own life. I want to have fun. She went on. Let me have some fun.
According to Leland, Marcus could not bear to give Nikki the space that she needed.
What, you trying to sleep around or something?
Mom thought that she was messing with another dude.
Is there another man?
Another.
He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Waco detectives investigating the death of single mother Nikki Walker are speaking with Leland Marsh, a friend of Nikki's ex, Marcus Scott. According to Leland, Marcus was exhibiting suspicious behavior in the days before Nikki's body was discovered.
For investigators, what Leland is saying raises even more red flags around Marcus.
It had to be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at our house like maybe 1 in the morning.
Detectives can now place him at the scene of the crime within the time frame that Nikki was killed.
Additionally, Leland claims that days prior to her death, Nikki told Marcus she needed some space, and he didn't take it well.
Is there another man?
Another. She was establishing that this wasn't working and that she was ending things. He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Marcus is not all the way right in the mind. If you know him from like when I know him to now, that's not the same person.
Well, do you know what happened to him?
He went to prison.
In the early 2000s, Marcus spent 7 years in prison for weapon charges and organized crimes.
He came out of prison, he's just not the same person.
What's changed?
Everything. I don't know how to explain it. He sit down, then he'll jump up, turn around in a circle, and sit back down. Or he'll get out the car, just stand there and look down the street. I don't know if his mind is gone, you know.
After speaking with Leland, detectives are convinced that Marcus was involved in Nikki's murder.
Why didn't he mention getting dropped off at Nikki's house on Tuesday night?
The aggression, the attachment style, those are all very alarming.
And later that afternoon, Nikki's cousin Floyd Jordan comes forward with even more damning information about Marcus.
That man was no good for her.
Floyd tells the police that Marcus was abusing Nikki.
She didn't break up with him for nothing. He's dangerous.
Floyd tells the detectives that the reason Nikki and Marcus's relationship ended was because of Marcus's violent tendencies.
Tell me! Nikki came to the realization that not only was it dangerous for her to be around Marcus, but it was dangerous for her kids as well. She didn't want them to be around that.
But Floyd says Marcus refused to take no for an answer.
For stalking her and showing up to her house unannounced.
He would show up there. He would wait for her in the dark, wait for her at midnight.
She caught him peeking in her windows before.
Floyd tells detectives the situation came to a head on Tuesday night.
She called me Tuesday in the middle of the night, freaking out.
Nikki told Floyd that she had just recently driven home from work and found Marcus waiting for her on her porch.
Oh my God, he's on my front porch. What should I do?
You need to get out of there.
Detectives realize what they're hearing from Floyd directly contradicts what Marcus told Leland.
Marcus told Leland that Nikki never came home that night after he dropped them off.
I told her to come pick me up and I'd help get him to leave.
He felt like he could protect her if Marcus tried anything.
So she picked me up and we went back to the house.
Marcus, what are you doing here?
I just want to talk to you. That's all.
No, it's late and I'm over this.
Come on, man. Go home.
But once again, Marcus refused to let up.
Marcus's entire demeanor shifted.
Man, who the hell you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
I'm gonna leave. Whoa.
Waco detectives investigating the murder of Nikki Walker are speaking with her cousin, Floyd Jordan. Floyd has just revealed that Nikki's tumultuous relationship with her ex, Marcus Scott, came to a head on the night of February 2nd.
Man, who the hell you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
I'm gonna leave. Whoa.
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
You're not leaving me. You know that, right?
Marcus, just stop, okay?
You're gonna regret it if you try to leave me. I promise you
Hey,
that.
cool it, man.
Hands off me.
Leave.
Man.
Floyd tells detectives that eventually Marcus stormed off in a rage. But it wasn't the last they heard from him that night.
Floyd says Marcus continued to text Nikki threatening messages.
Oh my God.
Damn, this dude isn't letting up.
What if he comes back?
The messages were so alarming that Nikki was afraid to be home alone.
Why don't you stay at my place tonight?
Okay, yeah. That might be for the better.
Let's get out of here.
Floyd tells detectives that the last time he or anyone else saw Nikki, she was leaving his house at 4 a.m. the next morning.
All of this wasn't just a coincidence. It was Marcus. I know it was him. He killed Nikki.
Floyd speculates that maybe he went back to her house to wait for her to show up there.
Whatever option you go with, to him, Marcus Scott was guilty.
Thank you so much, Floyd. We really do appreciate you coming forward with all this.
He became essential to our case because now we've got a timeline where almost immediately before the murder's committed and her body's found, we've got our suspect threatening to do her harm.
After speaking with Floyd, detectives do a deep dive into Marcus's past.
They knew, according to Leland, Marcus had been in prison before, but they didn't know the extent of his crimes.
They find that Marcus has an alarming, decade-long criminal history, including convictions for deadly conduct, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and engaging in organized criminal activity.
And as they continue their investigation, detectives uncover another shocking piece of information.
In a substantially similar case, the detectives learned that in 2015, Marcus had broken into an ex-girlfriend's house and threatened to assault her.
When detectives contact the ex-girlfriend, she admits Marcus became violent with her on several occasions.
And she says that she eventually broke up with him because of how violent and possessive that he became.
Just like with Nikki, Marcus would show up to her home unannounced and would begin following her around as well.
To detectives, it's evidence of a disturbing and escalating pattern of behavior, but it's still not proof of murder.
They knew they had to talk to Marcus Scott again and confront him with the information that they had learned.
So detectives bring him in under the guise of a simple follow-up interview.
Marcus, thanks for coming back in.
No problem.
And this time, something on Marcus's leg catches their eye.
Marcus has scratches on his shin.
He had long pants on when they previously interviewed him.
What happened to your leg? That looks pretty painful.
When the detectives ask how he obtained these scratches, Marcus tells them that they are the result of an accident he had with a screen door.
It scraped me pretty bad.
They become even more convinced that Marcus is not telling the whole story.
Remind us again, when was the last time you and Nikki got together?
Sunday.
You sure?
Yeah.
We have reason to believe that's not true.
He doesn't mention anything about Leland dropping him off at her home on Tuesday night.
You saw her Tuesday, didn't you?
You two had an argument that night?
What? No, I never saw her on Tuesday.
Well, you willing to take a polygraph test to prove that?
Sure.
Although reluctant, Marcus does agree to go through with the lie detector test.
Did you get into an argument with Nikki Walker on Tuesday night, April 2nd?
No.
Did you harm Nikki Walker?
No.
Initially, he had denied any involvement, denied any violence in the relationship in the past, but then he fails the polygraph.
However, when detectives confront Marcus about the polygraph test results, he still doesn't waver.
All right, Marcus, tests show you're being deceptive. It's time to start telling the truth.
No, I didn't kill her. We got into a few arguments. Yeah, but nothing too crazy.
Marcus admits that he had been violent with Nikki in the past. He stated at one point he actually hit Nikki to get off of him during a fight that they had, which Nikki initiated.
And then he admits to play choking her during an argument in January.
Play choke?
Yeah. But, we were just messing around. That's all.
He continues to maintain that he had absolutely nothing to do with the murder.
And unfortunately for investigators, the results of the polygraph can't be used as evidence in court.
There's really good reason for that. Polygraph examinations, they're not a lie detector test. What they do is they measure sweat levels, heart rate, things that generally can be associated with deception. So they certainly have their value. They're just not admissible in any courtroom.
Therefore, with no confession or any other hard evidence, detectives will be forced to let Marcus go once again.
While Marcus's lies and his troubling relationship with Nikki point towards guilt, the detectives have no forensic evidence to prove that Marcus committed this murder.
But before he leaves, detectives obtain a sample of Marcus's DNA.
It could be months until they receive the results from the DNA evidence found at the crime scene. And eventually those months turn into years.
The Waco DPS crime lab, where we send blood to be analyzed for DNA, it simply takes time. It's a time-consuming process, and across the state of Texas, Waco included, forensic crime labs are overloaded with the amount of things that they have to test.
Nikki's loved ones start to grow weary that they will never receive justice for what has been done to her.
But then, on March 19th, 2018, more than 2 years after Nikki was killed, there's a breakthrough.
Detectives received word from the crime lab that they have completed testing on the specimens submitted in Nikki's case.
Marcus's blood was found at the crime scene. There's no longer any doubt on who's behind this murder.
The investigators believe that the blood came from the cut that he had on his leg.
Armed with their smoking gun, detectives file a warrant for Marcus's arrest on April 6th, 2018.
Marcus is taken into custody that same day.
He refuses to answer any more questions and asks for a lawyer.
And while justice for Nikki is long overdue, it looks like her loved ones may have to wait even longer.
Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment.
Waco investigators finally have Marcus Scott in custody for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Nikki Walker.
2 years went by without them being able to convict anyone for Nikki's murder.
But now they have DNA evidence to prove that Marcus's blood was in Nikki's car. Along with other circumstantial evidence, this case seemed like a slam dunk.
But in February of 2020, the case hits another roadblock.
During a pretrial hearing in February of 2020, Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
In order to be incompetent, there has to be proof that an individual does not understand the consequences of decisions that they can make.
As a result of this diagnosis, Marcus's trial is paused until he is able to get the necessary treatment.
What usually happens in Texas is that somebody who is held incompetent, they get sent to a state hospital until they regain competence. Some people never regain competence, some people do.
All right, Mr. Scott. Open up.
But even in the hospital, Marcus's violent tendencies emerge.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment. Ultimately, Marcus was charged with aggravated assault on a public servant, which is a third-degree felony.
3 years later, after undergoing additional psychiatric evaluation, Marcus is finally deemed competent to stand trial. But a new curveball hits this already muddled case.
Marcus goes blind during his time in the hospital due to glaucoma.
Marcus was a very different person than he was when he committed this murder. He was almost completely blind. It's a challenge from the outset because when jurors walk in, who they see seated at counsel table next to his attorney is a fairly nondescript, relatively thin blind man.
However, prosecutors warn jurors not to be fooled.
Prosecutors paint him as a vengeful ex who could not stand the rejection from Nikki Walker.
They point to Marcus' previous relationships and arrest history as proof that his anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
And we had family violence experts come and testify to those dynamics and what jurors can expect statistically when it comes to this kind of homicide. Any individual in a domestic relationship with a strangulation event in that relationship is 700% more likely to ultimately take that person's life.
And prosecutors believe that's exactly what happened to Nikki.
Marcus had become physically aggressive with her.
Marcus himself admitted to their arguments becoming violent at times.
As far as Nikki was concerned, this wasn't something that she was willing to put up with.
And when she broke up with Marcus at the end of January, prosecutors say it was like lighting a fuse on a time bomb.
Nikki was ready to end the relationship. And when you're talking about family violence cases, the most dangerous time is when the relationship is ending, because the control and power that the abusive partner has is about to end.
It finally sunk in that the relationship was over. Nikki was not going to take him back.
At that point, instead of letting Nikki walk away, Marcus decided that if he couldn't have her, no one else could either.
Prosecutors believe that after the Tuesday night confrontation with Floyd and Nikki, Marcus returned to Nikki's house.
She came back home around 4:30 a.m.
When Nikki returned to the house, Marcus was waiting on her.
Marcus, what are you doing?
Marcus managed to overpower Nikki and wrap his hands around her throat. He held his grip until she was dead.
With his adrenaline pumping, Marcus didn't realize his shin had smeared blood onto the passenger seat.
Then Marcus carved the obscenity into the side of her car.
Then he fled the scene and went back home as if nothing had happened.
The defense argues just because Marcus's blood was in the car doesn't prove anything.
Their story is a simple one, that we can't meet our burden, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, because the evidence or the investigation is insufficient to reach that burden.
Marcus claims that his blood must have gotten in the car from the other times that him and Nikki have had fights.
Prosecutors refuted this by saying the blood found in the passenger seat was bright red, indicating that it was fresh, as if it's only been there a day or two. And Marcus was seen with a wound on his leg.
When the jury retires to deliberate, it takes them just 30 minutes to return with a verdict. Marcus Scott is found guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Marcus was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Although Marcus received the maximum sentence for his crimes, Nikki's loved ones still struggle to deal with the loss that will now forever haunt them.
There's no winners when we come out of a trial like this.
Although I think that justice was served, I think that it's a lose-lose situation because now her children are left without a mom.
It's just a very, very sad experience, especially for her children who now have to grow up without their mother. And then the memory of such a violent way that they lost their mother. So that's going to impact them and everyone who knew her.
It takes someone who is extremely deranged to do the sort of things that Marcus did. This crime was so senseless, and now we have to mourn the loss of this vibrant, beautiful person.
Nikki was a beloved family member, a devoted mother, and the community is far worse off not having her with us anymore.
Abuse is never okay.
A canine search of the wooded area surrounding Timothy's apartment was conducted. After a neighbor reported hearing gunshots on the night of the disappearance, the search only located the remains of a deceased animal, bringing temporary relief but no answers. As Tanisha's family and volunteers organized search parties, investigators began receiving bizarre reports from residents of Timothy's apartment complex. Neighbors recalled that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had spent the entire weekend continuously operating 2 large barbecue grills on his patio. The smoke had become so intense and uncontrollable that residents had contacted the fire department. When firefighters arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing meat for a church picnic of nearly 200 people. One firefighter noted seeing what he believed was uncooked meat floating in a bathtub filled with water inside the apartment. Even more suspicious was the report of a neighbor who observed Timothy scrubbing his patio with a massive quantity of bleach, creating a scent so powerful that it caused physical irritation to her eyes. The accumulation of these odd behaviors forced investigators to reconsider Timothy as their primary suspect. Desperate for answers, Tanisha's sister contacted community activist Quan Nell X, who agreed to assist. Quan Nell discovered that Timothy's family had also reached out to him, claiming Timothy was being unfairly targeted by the police. Quan Nell arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. During the meeting, Timothy appeared extremely stressed and paranoid, requesting that they speak in the bathroom because he believed his apartment was wired with listening devices. Quan Nell, possessing a deep understanding of human psychology, looked Timothy in the eye and pressed him for the truth. Under the weight of his own conscience and Quannell's direct questioning, Timothy broke down. He admitted that when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark, he had flown into a violent rage, attacking and strangling her to death as she tried to walk out the door. He claimed he had placed her body in a dumpster at the rear of the complex. Quan Nell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller, along with Timothy. They drove to the indicated dumpster, but to their horror, the bin was completely empty. It had been cleared by sanitation services just days prior. Investigators realized that recovering Tanisha's body from the massive regional landfill would require a monumental effort costing upwards of $500,000. Ultimately, Tanisha's family made the painful request to halt the search, choosing not to exhaust public resources on a search that offered no guarantee of success. Timothy immediately invoked his right to counsel and refused to speak further with police. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required physical evidence. Crime scene investigators returned to Timothy's apartment. with advanced forensic tools conducting a meticulous, microscopic search. The effort yielded a grim breakthrough. In the kitchen garbage disposal, investigators recovered tiny bone fragments and a piece of tooth enamel. Forensic testing confirmed the enamel belonged to Tanisha. Additionally, charred bone fragments were found near the patio where Timothy had operated the grills. On September 29, 2008, the trial of Timothy Shepard commenced. The prosecution argued that Timothy had killed Tanisha in a fit of possessive rage because he could not accept her moving on with her life. To establish premeditation, they called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, to the stand. Nicholas delivered shocking testimony, revealing that Timothy had previously threatened that if Tanisha ever left him, he would cut her remains into pieces and boil them. Quannell X also testified, recounting Timothy's detailed confession. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand in his own defense, claiming that Tanisha had initiated the violence by attacking him with a knife and that he had acted in self-defense, blacking out during the struggle. However, his attempts to minimize his guilt collapsed during cross-examination. When asked to clarify what he had done with her remains, Timothy bluntly corrected the prosecutor, stating that he had placed her remains inside his smoker. The jury rejected Timothy's claims of self-defense. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed. It was a just conclusion for a perpetrator who had exhibited an unfathomable level of cruelty, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life behind bars. The final case brings us to the state of North Carolina, where a respected spiritual leader utilized his public platform to conceal a deeply predatory nature and a fatal, obsessive infatuation. On the cold winter morning of January 30th, 2008 morning, commuters along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, noticed a figure lying in the grass beside the highway. First responders discovered the body of a young woman who had been brutally stabbed 40 times. The violence of the attack was profound. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut, ensuring she could not cry out for help. Her jewelry remained intact, suggesting robbery was not the motive. The sheer volume of the wounds indicated an assailant acting out of extreme personal rage. Shortly after the scene was secured, Darren Curtis drove past the backup on his way to work. Just a half-mile past the crime scene, he spotted a white sedan parked on the shoulder of the road. Recognizing the vehicle as belonging to his wife, Darren panicked and returned to the police barricade. Investigators confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis, a promising business student at North Carolina Central University. Darren was immediately taken to the police station for questioning. Investigators examined his hands and arms for defensive wounds, finding none. He consented to a search of his home and vehicle, which yielded no evidence of involvement. Darren's timeline was consistent. He had gone to sleep at 11:30 8:30 the night before, assuming his wife was staying with her family after. Studying late, finding no motive or physical evidence linking him to the crime. Police released him. An autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a vital piece of biological evidence. A condom was recovered from her vaginal canal. Crucially, there were no signs of physical trauma or struggle in her genital area, suggesting she had engaged in consensual sexual intercourse shortly before her death. Investigators subpoenaed Latrice's mobile phone records and discovered a flurry of calls exchanged around midnight with a young man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent basketball player at North Carolina Central University, with hopes of securing a career in the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the murder, Stephen arrived at the sheriff's office to provide a statement, accompanied by his roommate and landlord, a local pastor named Robert Reeves. In the interrogation room, Stephen initially claimed he and Latrice were merely classmates. However, when confronted with the autopsy findings, he admitted they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. He explained that on the night of January 29th, Latrice had visited his basement apartment. During their encounter, the condom had become trapped. Unable to retrieve it, Latrice left his home around 10 in the evening. Stephen claimed he then drove to the apartment of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until approximately 1 in the morning. Velma Newton confirmed Stephen's alibi, but added a critical piece of information. She and Stephen had been receiving a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they end their relationship. Furthermore, someone had recently slashed all 4 tires on Stephen's car. The investigation took a dramatic turn when State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives. Cooper reported that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on the night of the murder, he had observed a vehicle parked near the location where Latrice's body was later found. Running the vehicle's license plate, Cooper discovered it was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Pastor Reeves, a charismatic 43-year-old minister known as the Bishop, was a highly respected figure in the local religious community. When detectives questioned him regarding his vehicle's presence at the scene, Reeves claimed he had been attending a church service before returning home, suggesting that Stephen must have borrowed his car without permission. However, investigators noted deep scratches on Reeves' hands and arms. The pastor claimed he had scraped his arm while helping Stephen move a desk. When investigators interviewed Stephen, he denied that any such move or injury had occurred. He then made a startling disclosure. Pastor Reeves had developed a bizarre, unwanted sexual obsession with him, even offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors, an offer Stephen had rejected. A search of the pastor's phone records revealed that the anonymous threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had been placed from Reeves' own mobile device. The final piece of evidence came from the state crime lab. DNA recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car matched Pastor Robert Reeves. The presence of Stephen's DNA under Latrice's fingernails was explained as a natural transfer from their consensual sexual encounter earlier that evening. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves reveals a deeply manipulative individual who utilized his religious standing to project an aura of moral authority while harboring a history of sexual predation, driven by an intense jealousy of any woman who occupied Stephen's attention. Reeves had stalked Latrice on the night of the murder. He followed her onto the highway, forced or persuaded her to pull over, and carried out a savage attack, believing that by removing her, he could eliminate a rival for Stephen's affection. On October 7, 2009, a Wake County jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, exposing the profound hypocrisy of a trusted community figure and delivering justice for Latrice Curtis. In examining these three narratives, we are reminded of the critical importance of vigilance, empathy, and early intervention in cases where affection begins to transform into obsession. In each instance, the careful, scientific dedication of law enforcement and forensic specialists succeeded in piercing the veil of lies constructed by the perpetrators. While the lives of Wayne Irby, Tanisha Stewart, and Latrice Curtis were tragically cut short, their memories are honored through the pursuit and achievement of justice, proving that even in the face of profound human malice, the truth will ultimately prevail. The human mind is a complex landscape where the brightest of emotions can sometimes cast the darkest of shadows. In the study of criminal psychology, we often observe that the most tragic events do not begin in the minds of hardened career criminals, but rather within the delicate, volatile spaces of personal relationships, when love, which ought to be a source of support and mutual growth, becomes entangled with the destructive forces of possessiveness, jealousy, and control. The results can be catastrophic. To understand these tragedies is not merely to catalog the evidence left behind on a cold afternoon or in a darkened room. It requires us to gently and respectfully examine the vulnerabilities of those involved, to look closely at the behavioral patterns that preceded the violence, and to honor the dedicated efforts of the investigators who labor to bring truth to light. By exploring three distinct, deeply troubling cases, we can begin to analyze the psychological mechanisms that drive individuals to commit unspeakable acts, and, in doing so, perhaps offer some measure of educational value and awareness to the broader community. The first case study brings us to the quiet plains of North Texas in the winter of 2004. To the outside observer, the relationship between Denise Miller and Wayne Irby seemed to possess all the elements of a traditional small-town romance. Denise was a 36-year-old mother of two who had recently moved from her home in Kansas City, Missouri, to the growing suburb of Little Elm, Texas. She was seeking a fresh start after a difficult divorce, a clean slate upon which to build a stable and prosperous life for her teenage daughter, Whitney, and her young son, Walter. By all accounts, she was succeeding. She had secured a good position with a local beverage distributor, managed her finances with prudence, and built a beautiful house that stood as a testament to her independence and resilience. Her path crossed with Wayne Irby in 2003 under circumstances that seemed almost cinematic. Wayne was a 37-year-old patrol officer with the Little Elm Police Department, a 6-year veteran of the force who was known for his dedication, his approachable demeanor, and his deep passion for his work. Colleagues often remarked that he was an officer who truly cared for his community, a man who literally and figuratively bled blue. On a routine patrol, he noticed that Denise's garage door had been left open, leaving her home vulnerable to local thefts. He knocked on her door to advise her to close it, leaving his card with a polite offer of assistance should she ever need it. This brief, protective gesture sparked an immediate connection. It was not long before Wayne returned, not in his official capacity, but to ask Denise out on a date. The chemistry was instantaneous and mutual. Wayne confided in his close friends on the force that he believed he had finally found the woman with whom he wanted to settle down. For Denise, Wayne represented security, strength, and a partner who could share in her success. He was quickly embraced by her children, who grew to view him as a warm and stabilizing father figure. For a time, they appeared to be the picture of a happy, blended family. Yet beneath this harmonious surface, psychological friction was beginning to develop. Trust is the foundation of any enduring partnership, and when that foundation is compromised, the entire structure becomes unstable. Denise began to harbor deep suspicions regarding Wayne's fidelity because of his friendly, outgoing nature and his high visibility in the community. Wayne was frequently in contact with other residents, including female acquaintances on his beat. 2. A mind primed by past betrayals, these routine interactions were viewed through a lens of profound suspicion. Denise began to confront Wayne with allegations of infidelity, which he vehemently denied. According to friends, Wayne expressed frustration, feeling smothered by her constant doubts and the frequent, anxious phone calls that began to interrupt his shifts. In December of 2003, the underlying tension erupted into a physical altercation at Wayne's rental home. Denise had arrived unannounced, spotting another woman's purse through a window near the door. When Wayne opened the door, a heated argument ensued that quickly turned physical. An incident report from that evening detailed injuries to both parties, but Wayne bore the brunt of the physical damage, displaying significant scratches on his face and a dark bruise around his eye. Denise initially filed a complaint of domestic violence against Wayne, but withdrew it the following day after a witness corroborated Wayne's account that he had merely been defending himself and attempting to de-escalate her sudden, aggressive reaction. This incident serves as a significant behavioral marker for psychological analysts. It reveals a pattern of high emotional volatility, an inability to manage rejection, and a willingness to use physical aggression to assert control when a perceived threat to the relationship emerged. Despite these serious warning signs, the couple attempted to reconcile. In the spring of 2004, they decided to purchase a home together, hoping that a shared investment and a unified household would soothe their lingering trust issues. However, cohabitation did not resolve their deep-seated insecurities. By late autumn, the emotional strain proved too heavy, and Wayne made the difficult decision to move out, renting a separate house across town. The separation was brief. In November of 2004, Denise unexpectedly lost her employment. Motivated by concern for her and her children, Wayne offered to return and help support the household, attempting once more to salvage their relationship. But the underlying pathology of possession had not been addressed. The final act of this tragedy began to unfold on the morning of December 10th, 2004. At 6 in the morning, the officers of the Little Elm Police Department gathered for their daily briefing. One chair remained empty. Wayne Irby, a man who was notoriously punctual and dedicated, was a no-show. This immediate departure from his routine raised red flags among his colleagues, particularly his partner, Jerry Walker, and his close friend, Cynthia Medrano. When phone calls went unanswered, the police chief dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with Denise. The officers found the house quiet. No vehicles parked in the driveway, and no one answered the door. Later that afternoon, investigators spoke with Denise's children, who revealed that they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. More concerning was a phone call Denise's daughter had received around midnight, in which her mother spoke in a highly unusual, overly sentimental tone, stating she was running errands and expressing her love before telling the children to prepare themselves for school the next morning. Recognizing that both an officer and his partner were missing, Detective Walker and Officer James decided to check the rental home that Wayne had recently vacated. Utilizing a key obtained from the landlord, they entered the quiet residence. On the kitchen counter, they found Wayne's personal fanny pack and his cellular telephone, items he rarely, if ever, left behind. Stepping further into the hallway, Officer Wynn stopped, gasping, and warned his partner to stay back. Lying on the floor was Wayne Irby. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound, delivered to the very center of the back of his head. The nature of the wound strongly suggested he had been shot from behind, completely unaware of the threat. The search for Denise now took on a desperate urgency. Was she another victim of a hidden assailant, or was she the perpetrator of this terrible deed? A subsequent search of the home she shared with Wayne revealed critical pieces of evidence. In the master bedroom, investigators discovered a handwritten note from Denise expressing a profound weariness and a desire to escape her pain, a clear indication of suicidal ideation. Furthermore, Wayne's duty belt hung on the wall, but his holster was empty. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, crime scene investigators located another handwritten note from Denise. The message was brief, but devastating, apologizing for taking both of their lives and asking that their mothers be contacted. For the investigators, this was a chilling, written confession. It suggested a murder-suicide plot, but Denise was still missing. At 4 in the morning on December 11th, 2004, a hotel manager in the nearby city of Gainesville, Texas, received a distressed, slurred call from a guest. Attempting to investigate, the manager found the door to the room deadbolt from the inside. A maintenance worker was summoned to force the door open. Inside the dark, disarrayed room, they discovered Denise Miller lying on the floor in a fetal position, bleeding from a gunshot wound just above her eye. Beside her lay a .25 caliber handgun and a bottle of alcohol, along with over-the-counter sleeping pills. Wayne's .40 caliber service weapon was also found in the room. It had jammed because Denise had attempted to load a cartridge into the chamber backward, forcing her to utilize the smaller .25 caliber handgun instead. Emergency medical technicians rushed her to a nearby trauma center where she survived her life-threatening injuries, but was left with severe, permanent physical and cognitive impairments. In her hotel room, investigators found a third, much longer note. Amid expressions of remorse, there was a single line claiming that the shooting of Wayne had been an accident and that she had panicked and fled. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy interviewed Denise at her bedside, she appeared disoriented and claimed to have no memory of the events. She denied that Wayne was dead and seemed genuinely shocked when told of her own suicide attempt. Psychologically, this presenting amnesia can be understood in two ways. The severe trauma of a bullet passing through the frontal lobe of the brain can certainly cause genuine, profound memory deficits, retrograde amnesia, and a loss of cognitive and motor functions. Alternatively, the human mind, when confronted with an act of such horrific consequence, may construct a defensive barrier of denial and suppression to protect itself from the crushing weight of guilt. To the police force and Wayne's grieving family, however, the claims of an accidental shooting were hard to accept. The physical evidence spoke clearly. Forensic testing on the .25 caliber handgun revealed that it required approximately 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, completely undermining the theory of an accidental discharge. The bullet recovered from Wayne's head matched the weapon perfectly. A gun that belonged to Denise's stepfather and which she had brought with her to the encounter. After 18 months of intensive physical rehabilitation, Denise was declared competent to stand trial. In July of 2006, she entered the courtroom in a wheelchair, a frail, partially paralyzed, and visually impaired figure. Her defense team argued that she had already paid an immense physical and psychological price and maintained that the shooting was a tragic accident born of a volatile argument. The prosecution, however, urged the jury to look past her physical frailty and focus on her actions. She had armed herself beforehand, confronted a man who was attempting to end the relationship, shot him in the back of the head, left him to die without calling for medical assistance, written 3 separate notes, and fled. After less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Spared the death penalty, she was sentenced to 62 years in prison.
4.
The families of both the victim and the perpetrator, there was no sense of
victory.
A dedicated officer's life had been cut short, and 2 children had lost their mother to a self-inflicted prison of concrete and regret.
It stands
as a sober reminder of the tragic destination of uncontrolled jealousy and the illusion that one can possess another human being. The second case study shifts our focus to Houston, Texas, in the spring of 2007. It is a narrative that highlights the vulnerability of youth and the horrific lengths to which a controlling personality will go when their sense of dominance is challenged. Tanisha Stewart was a 19-year-old college freshman attending Texas A&M University on a hard-earned academic
scholarship.
Growing up in one of Houston's most challenging neighborhoods and losing her father at a young age, Tanisha had refused to let her circumstances define her. She was a brilliant, hardworking, and ambitious young woman with an infectious smile and a promising future. In May of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, 17-year-old Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old. Despite the 8-year age gap, Timothy pursued her persistently until she agreed to go out with him. Over the next 2 years, their relationship grew increasingly serious. Timothy made a concerted effort to win over Tanisha's mother and siblings, assisting with household repairs and presenting himself as a helpful, caring partner. However, as Tanisha transitioned from high school to university life, the dynamics of their relationship began to shift. The physical and social distance of college life allowed Tanisha to grow more independent, to meet new friends, and to expand her horizons. This healthy, normal development of a young adult was viewed by Timothy not as an achievement to be celebrated, but as a direct threat to his control. Timothy's behavior became increasingly possessive and domineering. He would call her incessantly, send threatening text messages, and on several occasions, he even drove 2 hours to the university campus to search for her when she did not answer his calls immediately. Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, later recalled a deeply troubling incident in which Timothy had physically assaulted Tanisha, choking her during an argument when she expressed a desire to leave. These behaviors are classic indicators of an abusive relationship where the perpetrator uses intimidation, isolation, and physical violence to maintain a sense of ownership over their partner. In March of 2007, Tanisha returned home to Houston for her spring
break.
While she spent some time with Timothy, she was also exploring her newfound independence, planning to attend a concert with her friends and keeping in touch with a classmate from university, Mark Marks. Tanisha and Mark had recently begun dating, and Tanisha had confided in her friends that she was finally ready to enter a relationship with Timothy, though she wished to do so gently to avoid hurting his feelings. On the morning of Thursday, March 15th, 2007, Timothy picked Tanisha up from a friend's house. While in his vehicle, Tanisha received a phone call from Mark Marks. This communication sparked an immediate, intense confrontation. When they arrived at Timothy's apartment, he demanded to know why. Another man was calling her so early in the morning. Tanisha, weary of the drama and the constant monitoring, refused to engage, telling him she did not want to discuss it and simply wanted to enjoy her break. According to Timothy's initial statement to the police, Tanisha walked out of his apartment later that morning, and he never saw her again. When Tanisha failed to show up for her scheduled concert and did not return her mother's phone calls, her family's concern turned to panic. Tanisha was not a person to vanish without communication. Her family filed a missing persons report on March 19th. Investigators initially questioned Timothy for nearly 20 hours. He maintained his story with a calm, cooperative demeanor and even gave written consent for search teams to examine his apartment. Finding no obvious signs of a struggle or foul play, detectives turned their attention to Mark Marks. However, Mark cooperated fully and possessed a verified, solid alibi. He had been at a gathering with friends on South Padre Island at the time of her disappearance. With their primary leads seemingly exhausted, investigators were faced with the terrifying possibility of a random abduction. Yet, as the community rallied to search the wooded areas near Timothy's apartment complex, neighbors began to report highly unusual behavior. They noted that for several days following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been operating 2 large barbecue grills and a smoker on his patio almost continuously. The smoke had become so dense and uncontrolled at one point that neighbors called the fire department, fearing a structural fire. When firefighters arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing a massive quantity of meat for an upcoming church picnic of nearly 200 people. The firefighters, seeing what appeared to be raw meat soaking in a bathtub, accepted his explanation and helped him control the flames. Additionally, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his patio with a massive amount of bleach, the fumes of which were so strong they caused her eyes to burn. As suspicion began to focus back on Timothy, Tanisha's family contacted Quannell X, a prominent community activist known for his ability to facilitate communication between law enforcement and young men in the community. Quannell, who had also been contacted by Timothy's family to protect him from potential police misconduct, agreed to meet Timothy privately in his apartment. The 2 men met in the bathroom of the apartment, where Timothy was visibly trembling and highly stressed. Quannell, utilizing his experience and sharp perception, looked Timothy in the eye and asked him directly if he had harmed Tanisha. Timothy broke down. He confessed that when Tanisha tried to leave the apartment, he had flown into a jealous rage, attacked her, and strangled her to death. He claimed he had then placed her body in a commercial dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. Armed with this confession, police and a crime scene unit rushed to the dumpster, accompanied by Tanisha's devastated family. However, when they arrived, they discovered the dumpster was entirely empty. It had been routinely collected and its contents transported to a massive regional landfill. A search of the landfill was deemed logistically impossible and financially prohibitive, costing upwards of $500,000. Showing immense dignity and selflessness, Tanisha's family requested that the county not expend those public resources, accepting that her physical remains might never be fully recovered. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to counsel and refused to speak further with investigators, leaving the prosecution with a challenging task: proving a homicide had occurred without a body. To build a solid case, forensic investigators scoured Timothy's apartment with microscopic precision. Their meticulous efforts yielded critical physical evidence. In the kitchen, they discovered tiny bone fragments and a piece of enamel inside the garbage disposal. Subsequent DNA testing confirmed the enamel matched Tanisha's genetic profile. Furthermore, investigators located small, charred bone fragments on the ground near the patio where the grills had been operated. At his trial in September of 2008, the prosecution presented a horrifying but logically sound reconstruction of the crime. They argued that Timothy, driven by a pathological need for control, had killed Tanisha to prevent her from moving on with her life. He had then systematically dismembered and incinerated her remains using the barbecue grills to erase all evidence of his deed. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand and attempted to claim self-defense, asserting that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that he had blacked out during the struggle, only to wake and find her dead. He also admitted to the gruesome details of how he disposed of her remains, coldly, correcting the prosecutor that he had used a smoker rather than a traditional grill. The jury rejected this self-defense claim, recognizing the profound disparity in size, strength, and the extreme efforts taken to conceal the crime. Timothy Shepard was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison. The case highlights the devastating reality of domestic control and serves as an educational warning regarding the dangers of extreme possessiveness. It also honors the tireless efforts of the forensic scientists and investigators who refuse to let a lack of a body prevent justice from being served. Our third case study takes us to Raleigh, North Carolina, in January of 2008, exploring a web of hidden identities, proxy jealousy, and a betrayal of the sacred trust placed in a community leader. Latrice Curtis was a beautiful 21-year-old student attending North Carolina Central University. She had recently married her college sweetheart, Darren Curtis, a former National Guard soldier who was respectful, hardworking, and deeply devoted to her. To their families and friends, the newlyweds seemed exceptionally happy, embarking on their lives together in a cozy apartment while Latrice completed her degree in business administration. On the morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh made a horrific discovery. Lying in the grass on the shoulder of the busy highway was the body of a young woman who had been stabbed repeatedly. The attack had been exceptionally violent, involving over 40 stab wounds to her face, neck, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords cut, indicating an intense personal rage. Among the commuters delayed by the resulting traffic backup was Darren Curtis. As he slowly passed the crime scene, he felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of
dread.
A half-mile further down the road, he spotted a white vehicle parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. It was his wife's car. Panic-stricken, Darren returned to the crime scene, where investigators confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was Latrice. Initially, investigators considered Darren as a potential suspect, a routine procedure in domestic homicides. They examined him for physical signs of a struggle, but found no cuts, scratches, or bruises. A search of his vehicle and the couple's apartment revealed no physical evidence connecting him to the
crime.
Darren cooperated fully and was quickly cleared of suspicion. The autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a critical clue. A condom was discovered inside her, yet there were no physical injuries consistent with a sexual assault. This suggested she had engaged in a consensual sexual encounter shortly before her death. When investigators subpoenaed Latrice's phone records, they discovered a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight on the night of her murder with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent student athlete at the university, an ambitious basketball player who harbored realistic aspirations of playing in the National Basketball Association. Stephen was brought in for questioning, accompanied by his roommate and landlord, Pastor Robert Reeves. Under pressure from investigators, Stephen admitted that he and Latrice had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. On the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his basement apartment, where they had engaged in intercourse. The condom had become trapped inside her, and despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it. Latrice left his residence around 10 in the evening, and Stephen followed shortly after to clear his head, eventually driving to the home of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton. Stephen claimed that Latrice called him repeatedly afterward, expressing anxiety about a potential pregnancy and the implications it would have for her marriage and his athletic career. To verify Stephen's account, detectives interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, the 43-year-old minister, known affectionately as the bishop, was a highly charismatic figure, a motivational speaker, and a respected leader in the local religious community. Reeves confirmed that Stephen rented a room in his home and that he had seen Latrice's car parked outside the house earlier that evening. He claimed to have left for a church service at 8:15 and returned at 11:30, at which point both Stephen and Latrice's vehicles were gone. However, when investigators interviewed Reeves' sister, who attended the same church. She stated she had not seen her brother at the service that night. Intrigued by this discrepancy, detectives looked closer at the pastor.
They
noticed several deep scratches and abrasions on his hands and arms. Reeves claimed he had sustained these injuries when he tripped while helping Stephen move a desk, but when questioned separately, Stephen had no memory of any such accident. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a dark, hidden aspect of the pastor's psychology. Stephen revealed that Reeves had recently begun to display a bizarre, highly intrusive interest in his personal and sexual life. The pastor had entered Stephen's room after Latrice's visits, asking highly personal questions and eventually making unsolicited sexual advances, offering to waive Stephen's rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had firmly rejected these advances, but the encounter revealed a profound, secret infatuation. Furthermore, Stephen's girlfriend, Velma Newton, revealed that she and Stephen had been receiving a barrage of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen had recently discovered that all 4 tires on his vehicle had been slashed. Phone records subsequently revealed that these blocked, threatening calls had been placed from Pastor Reeves' cellular phone. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves was now clear. He was a closeted, highly obsessive individual who had developed a dangerous, unrequited infatuation with his young roommate. He viewed any woman who engaged with Stephen not merely with disapproval, but with an intense, pathological jealousy. The breakthrough in the case came from a routine traffic report. State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives to report that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, he had observed a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights on along Interstate 540. He ran the license plate, which registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Across the highway, he had also noticed a white vehicle with its hazards flashing, matching the description of Latrice's car. The physical evidence sealed the case. DNA collected from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car matched Pastor Reeves, while Stephen's DNA was found under Latrice's fingernails. This was consistent with their intimate contact earlier that evening. The presence of the pastor's DNA inside her vehicle, combined with his lack of a credible alibi and the scratches on his arms, left no room for doubt. Investigators concluded that on the night of the murder, Robert Reeves had observed Latrice leaving Stephen's apartment, driven by a consuming proxy jealousy. He followed her onto the highway in his own vehicle, forced or convinced her to pull over on the shoulder, and launched a savage, frenzied physical attack. He then abandoned his own vehicle when it experienced mechanical issues, leaving her body in the grass. At his trial in September of 2009, the prosecution presented this compelling narrative of obsession and betrayal. The defense attempted to argue that the DNA evidence was merely the result of a transfer from the shared household and suggested that Stephen had the greater motive to commit the crime to protect his career. However, The jury was not swayed by these arguments. Recognizing the overwhelming weight of the physical evidence and the pastor's pattern of stalking and harassment, Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Latrice's grieving family and her husband, Darren, but it also left a community grappling with the realization that a trusted spiritual leader had led a double life of manipulation and violence. When we look back upon these three tragic narratives, we are reminded of the profound importance of emotional awareness, the danger of unchecked possessiveness, and the necessity of recognizing the warning signs of control within relationships. In each instance, a life of immense potential was cut short by an individual who allowed their internal insecurities and desires to distort their humanity. By analyzing these cases through a psychological lens, we do not seek to sensationalize the tragedy, but rather to highlight the quiet, tireless dedication of the law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and community members who work to ensure that truth prevails. It is through their efforts that justice is served, and through our understanding of these events that we can work to build a safer, more empathetic society. The human heart is a complex and often unpredictable landscape. In the realm of criminal psychology, we frequently observe how the most beautiful of human emotions, love, can be distorted by the shadows of insecurity, possessiveness, and delusion. When a healthy attachment degrades into a pathological desire for control, the consequences are often devastating. This exploration reviews three distinct investigations that occurred across the United States of America, offering a profound look into the criminal mind, the tragic cost of obsessive behaviors, and the relentless dedication of the law enforcement officers who work to bring truth to light. The tragedy of Little Elm. In the quiet community of Little Elm, Texas, the year 2003 brought together two people who seemed destined for a classic romance. Denise Swall was a 36-year-old divorced mother of two children, Whitney and Walter. Bubbly, popular, and resilient, she had moved from Kansas City, Missouri, to the Dallas suburbs seeking a fresh start after the painful dissolution of her marriage. She had built a beautiful home, secured a successful position with a local beverage distributor, and dedicated herself to providing a stable, loving environment for her family. Her path crossed with Wayne Irby, a 37-year-old veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. Wayne was a dedicated police officer who wore his passion for his community on his sleeve. Their introduction was remarkably ordinary. Wayne, patrolling his neighborhood beat, noticed Denise had left her garage door open. Concerned about local property thefts, he knocked on her door to advise her to close it, leaving his business card. It was not long before the charming officer returned to ask Denise on a dinner date. The romance blossomed rapidly. Wayne was embraced by Denise's children, and to outside observers, they resembled a happy, blended family. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect union, deep insecurities began to emerge. Denise harbored intense suspicions regarding Wayne's fidelity because of his outgoing nature and his prominence as a local officer. Wayne was a popular figure in the community. This popularity fueled a mounting jealousy within Denise. Confrontations became frequent, and although Wayne denied any wrongdoing, the emotional foundation of the relationship began to erode. By the spring of 2004, the couple attempted to move past their trust issues by purchasing a home together. However, cohabitation did not soothe Denise's anxieties. The arguments escalated to the point where Wayne decided to end the relationship and move into a separate rental home. When Denise unexpectedly lost her employment in November of that year, Wayne, displaying a compassionate nature, agreed to reconcile so that she and her children would not face financial instability. Sadly, this reconciliation would prove to be short-lived. On the morning of December 10th, 2004, the Little Elm Police Department convened for its daily morning briefing at 6 in the morning. Wayne Irby was conspicuously absent. This was entirely uncharacteristic of Wayne, who was known for his punctuality and dedication. When phone calls went unanswered, his colleagues, including Cynthia Medrano and Chief Waylon Rhodes, grew deeply concerned. A welfare check was initiated at the home Wayne shared with Denise. Officers found the residence empty, with no vehicles in the driveway. Upon contacting Denise's teenage children, investigators learned that their mother had not returned home the previous evening. Her daughter, Whitney, recalled a highly unusual midnight phone call from her mother, who expressed an intense sentiment of love and instructed the children to prepare themselves for school. With 2 missing persons, the search intensified. Wayne's partner, Jerry Walker, along with Officer James Wynn, decided to inspect the rental home that Wayne had recently vacated. Upon entering the residence, they discovered Wayne's personal fanny pack and cellular phone on the kitchen counter, an immediate indication of trouble. Moving further into the house, James Wynn made a horrifying discovery. Wayne Irby was lying deceased on the floor, the victim of a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The scene of the crime was processed by investigators from the Denton County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers. The trajectory of the bullet suggested Wayne had been shot from behind, indicating he never saw his assailant coming. Given the absence of signs of a struggle, investigators began to look closely at Denise Miller. A search of Denise's primary residence revealed a disturbing handwritten letter in the master bedroom, which suggested she was contemplating ending her own life. Furthermore, Wayne's police duty belt was found hanging in a closet with an empty holster. Her vehicle was missing, and an all-points bulletin was broadcast to law enforcement across the region. As investigators dug deeper into the history of the couple, they uncovered a volatile past. In December of 2003, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne after discovering him with another woman. The Physical confrontation had left Wayne with significant facial scratches and a black eye. Although Denise later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had initiated the physical altercations, her behavioral patterns of extreme jealousy and constant phone surveillance continued to alarm those close to Wayne. Just prior to his death, Wayne had reportedly confided in a friend that he intended to leave Denise permanently. The physical evidence grew stronger when investigators discovered a second note on the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home. Written by Denise, it contained an apology for taking both of their lives, requesting that their mothers be contacted. At 4 a.m. on December 11, 2004, the night manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received a distress telephone call from a guest. Upon attempting to investigate, the manager and a maintenance worker had to breach the locked deadbolt of the hotel room. Inside, they discovered Denise Miller lying on the floor in a fetal position, suffering from a critical gunshot wound just above her eye. Resting beside her was a .25 caliber handgun. Denise was rushed to a nearby trauma center. Inside the hotel room, investigators found alcohol, over-the-counter sleeping pills, and Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. In a display of tragic incompetence, Denise had attempted to end her life with Wayne's service weapon first, but she had loaded the ammunition backwards, causing the mechanism to jam. She then used the .25 caliber handgun. A third, longer note was discovered in her hotel room, which contained a single line asserting that she had accidentally shot Wayne and had fled in a state of panic. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy interviewed Denise at her hospital bedside, she claimed to have absolutely no memory of the shooting or of her own self-inflicted wound, while her brain trauma, combined with the ingestion of alcohol and medication, may have caused genuine cognitive disorientation. Many within the community wondered if this amnesia was a convenient psychological defense to avoid the reality of her actions. Following 18 months of physical rehabilitation, Denise, now blind in one eye and partially paralyzed, was deemed competent to stand trial. On July 10, 2006, the trial commenced. The defense argued that the shooting of Wayne Irby was a tragic, accidental discharge. However, the prosecution presented a crucial analysis from the state crime laboratory. Testing revealed that the trigger of the .25 caliber handgun required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to fire. This scientific evidence directly negated the theory of an accidental touch. The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before returning a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. Rather than receiving the death penalty, Denise Miller was sentenced to 62 years in confinement. From a psychological perspective, this case illustrates how pathological jealousy can consume an individual's cognitive reasoning. Denise's deep-seated fear of abandonment mutated into a dangerous obsession where she preferred the destruction of the relationship and of Wayne himself to the reality of him leaving her. Her subsequent attempt to take her own life followed by a profound state of denial and memory loss, represents the ultimate psychological collapse of an individual who could not face the consequences of her own desperate actions. The disappearance in Houston. In March of 2007, the city of Houston, Texas, became the stage for another tragic examination of possessiveness and control. Tanisha Stewart was a brilliant 19-year-old university student who had overcome the hardships of growing up in a tough Houston neighborhood. Having lost her father at a young age, she remained dedicated to her education, earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. In May of 2005, while working at a pizza restaurant, Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old at the time. Despite the 8-year age difference, a relationship developed. Timothy actively sought to win over Tanisha's family, assisting her mother with household repairs and technical issues. However, when Tanisha moved 2 hours away to attend college, the dynamic of their relationship shifted. Tanisha began to experience a newfound independence, expanding her social circle and growing as an individual. Timothy struggled with this transition. He became increasingly possessive, frequently calling her, demanding her attention, and even traveling to the university campus to monitor her movements. During her spring break in March of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston. Although she spent some time with Timothy, she also reconnected with other friends, including a 19-year-old student named Mark Marks. Tanisha and Mark had developed a close bond, and Tanisha had expressed an intention to end her turbulent relationship with Timothy. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, received a distressing call from their mother. Tanisha had failed to attend a scheduled concert and had not been heard from since Thursday. A missing persons report was filed on Monday, March 19th, and investigators immediately began searching for the young student. Timothy Shepard was brought in for questioning as one of the last people to have seen her. Timothy claimed that he had picked Tanisha up early Thursday morning, but that they had argued after she received an early morning telephone call from Mark Marks. According to Timothy, Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and walked out of his apartment later that morning, never to be seen by him again. Timothy voluntarily allowed investigators to search his apartment where no immediate signs of a struggle or foul play were observed. Investigators then turned their attention to Mark Marks. Mark cooperated fully with law enforcement, confirming that he and Tanisha were romantically interested in each other and that she planned to leave Timothy. Mark provided a verified alibi, proving he was on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, which cleared him of any suspicion. The investigation took a sinister turn when neighbors at Timothy's apartment complex reported highly unusual behavior occurring immediately after Tanisha went missing. Witnesses noted that Timothy had spent several days engaged in an intensive, continuous outdoor grilling session, utilizing 2 grills simultaneously. The smoke had become so overwhelming that neighbors contacted the fire department. When emergency responders arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing food for a massive church gathering of up to 200 people. Firefighters observed a large quantity of meat floating in his bathtub. Furthermore, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his patio with a concentration of bleach so strong that the fumes burned her eyes. Convinced that Timothy was hiding a dark truth, Tanisha's family contacted community activist Quan Nellex for assistance. Quan Nell, who had been approached by Timothy's family to protect him from potential police misconduct, arranged a private meeting with Timothy in the bathroom of his apartment. During this emotionally charged conversation, Quan Nell confronted Timothy about his involvement in Tanisha's disappearance. Timothy broke down, admitting that he had flown into a jealous rage when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark. He confessed to strangling Tanisha to death as she attempted to leave the apartment. Timothy initially claimed he had placed her body in a dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quan Nell immediately relayed this confession to investigator Sidney Miller. Unfortunately, by the time investigators arrived at the dumpster, it had been emptied. The contents had already been transferred to a massive regional landfill. Due to the astronomical cost and low probability of recovery, a physical search of the landfill was deemed impractical, a painful decision that Tanisha's family graciously supported to spare public resources. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to legal counsel and refused to speak further. To secure a conviction without a body, crime scene investigators meticulously scoured his apartment. Their efforts yielded critical forensic evidence. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal, they recovered tiny bone fragments and tooth enamel, which was scientifically matched to Tanisha. Additionally, charred bone fragments were discovered near the outdoor grill. The trial of Timothy Shepard commenced on September 29, 2008. The prosecution argued that Timothy, driven by an inability to accept Tanisha's independence and her decision to move on with her life, murder her, and then undertook a horrific process to destroy her remains. To establish premeditation, the prosecution called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, to the stand. Nicholas delivered a shocking testimony, revealing that Timothy had previously threatened that if Tanisha ever left him, he would kill her and dispose of her body by cutting her up and boiling her. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand and attempted to argue that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed Tanisha had attacked him with a knife during their argument and that he had blacked out while holding her neck. He presented photographs of minor cuts on his hands from the night of his arrest. However, when pressed by the prosecution regarding his actions after her death, Timothy admitted to placing her remains in a smoker rather than a standard grill. The jury remained unmoved by his claims of self-defense. Timothy Shepard was found guilty of murder and received the maximum sentence of 99 years in prison. The psychological profile of Timothy Shepard reveals an extreme manifestation of domestic control. When Tanisha left for university and began to outgrow the confines of their relationship, Timothy's sense of ownership was threatened. The act of murder, followed by the systematic attempt to completely incinerate her, remains represents an extreme desire not only to escape detection but to completely erase the identity and independence of a victim who dared to assert her own autonomy. The collision course in Raleigh. The final case brings us to Raleigh, North Carolina, in January of 2008. Latrice Curtis was a beautiful 21-year-old business administration student at North Carolina Central University. She had been married for just 9 months to Darren Curtis, an accounting student and former National Guard soldier whom her family respected deeply. On the morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters along Interstate 540 spotted what appeared to be a body lying in the grass beside the highway. First responders arrived to discover that the young woman had been brutally stabbed over 40 times. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut in an incredibly violent assault. She had clearly fought for her life, as evidenced by significant damage to her fingernails. Darren Curtis, driving to work along the same highway, noticed the backed-up traffic and the crime scene. A half-mile further down the road, he recognized his wife's white passenger car abandoned on the shoulder. Panicked, he returned to the scene, where investigators confirmed the devastating news of Latrice's death. An inspection of Latrice's vehicle revealed signs of a violent struggle inside, with a broken center console and blood on the driver's side door. Crime scene. Investigators recovered foreign deoxyribonucleic acid from the steering wheel and preserved evidence from beneath Latrice's fingernails. Darren Curtis was immediately interviewed by detectives. He explained that Latrice had called him the previous evening around 10 at night to say she was running late from her classes and was going to get some food. Darren had fallen asleep and assumed she had stayed at her family's home. His hands and arms showed no signs of physical trauma, and a search of his vehicle and apartment yielded no evidence connecting him to the crime. The autopsy of Latrice Curtis revealed a critical piece of evidence. A condom was discovered inside her body, with no physical injuries indicating sexual assault. This suggested she had engaged in recent, consensual sexual activity. A subpoena of her cellular phone records revealed a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent student-athlete at North Carolina Central University with ambitions of playing in the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the murder, Stephen walked into the sheriff's office accompanied by his roommate, a prominent local minister named Pastor Robert Reeves. Under interrogation, Stephen admitted that he and Latrice had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. On the night of the murder, she had visited him at his residence. During their encounter, the condom had become trapped, and they were unable to retrieve it. Latrice left his residence around 10 in the evening. Stephen claimed he subsequently visited his girlfriend, Velma Newton, and that Latrice had called him repeatedly throughout the night, expressing extreme anxiety about a potential pregnancy. Investigators interviewed Stephen's girlfriend, Velma, who confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 in the evening and departed around 1 in the morning. However, Velma also revealed that both she and Stephen had been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls, demanding they end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen's vehicle tires had been mysteriously slashed. To clarify the timeline, investigators interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, the 43-year-old minister, known in the community as a charismatic, motivational speaker